Hello everyone, it's Steve Wiss here and I'm joined by Kevin Harper, and we're going to be starting some All Sports Betting Pod Cricket ICC Champions Trophy podcast now. We're here for the tournament preview, and just to let everyone know, each day there's a match on. We will be having a separate podcast previewing that match with all the best tips, advice, analysis, whatever you want to call it. So I'm welcoming Kev on board as ever. Very much enjoyed the IPL podcast we did. A little bit of a shorter stint now, Kev, but arguably a bit more obviously worldwide and obviously bigger with a huge prize at stake.
Absolutely, yeah. The one global event of the summer, probably the best of all the global events, actually. I know the T20 World Cup's got loads of razzmatazz in it and everything, but you do get some horrible matches to watch in that. I don't think you're going to get that in this, Steve. Best 8 sides in the world doing battle over a short format, quick fire, brutal kind of format, really, which usually determines the best side in the world. So, yeah, all being well, we're in for 15 matches and 3 weeks of fantastic cricket.
Yeah, unlike the Cricket World Cup, you've got to be straight in with the wins here, haven't you? Because there's 2 groups of 4 teams. The top 2 qualify for the semi-finals, and then obviously go to the final. So you can't just hang around, can you?
Absolutely, that's what I alluded to with the brutal format. You win, you stay in, you lose, and you go home. Really, yes, there's a second chance in the group stage, but you don't really want to be relying on second chances in this competition. You only play 5 matches from start to finish. If you go the distance, the team that wins all 5 will probably win the competition.
Yeah, I mean, let's just, before we talk about the teams in detail, then we're moving on, obviously, from a T20 tournament, which is fresh in a lot of people's minds. What is the big difference these days between winning at 2020 and winning at 50 over cricket? What is the perfect sort of 50 over side these days? What do you need?
I think in T20 cricket, I've always maintained that the best bowling attack will win the competition. That rang true in the Indian Premier League just recently. It also rang true in the Big Bash at the start of the year. In 50 over cricket, it's not so much that. It's a combination of everything, really. You need good batting depth. You need a good mix of glue and power in the batting lineup. But also, you need to be attacking when you're in the field. You need to take wickets in this format. This format changed for the better at the last World Cup when Michael Clarke and Brendan McCullum led the way with attacking fields, with aggressive bowlers, and wicket taking really became a part of ODI cricket again. You only have to look at England and South Africa's final ODI at Lords on Monday to highlight that fact. AB de Villiers got a few of those wickets because he had 2-3 slips in, and that'll be a key part of this as well. Taking wickets will be important to keep runs down. This will be a high-scoring tournament, Steve. Of that, I've absolutely no doubt. So the side that can bat the deepest and be the most aggressive when they're in the field will probably be the ones to prevail.
Okay, let's start with the individual team previews. We're going to be heading into Group A, and let's start with the tournament hosts, England. They're also the bookmakers' favourites to win the tournament. Certainly heading into this particular event, I think there's a lot of hope and expectation amongst the English fans. It's been a dramatic turnaround in the last couple of years in this format of the game for England. I mean, historically, obviously never won a 50 over major trophy before, but England have made the final of this Champions Trophy a couple of times in recent years. So do you think they're deserving favourites, Kev, for this tournament?
I can see why they're favourites, Steve. They're not my favourites, but I can see why they're favourites. You're right, they've made the final of this tournament twice in the past. Ironically, the 2 times that England have held the competition, and ironically, they should have won both finals. I hate to use the C word, but I'm sure we'll mention it with a couple of other sides in the tournament, so it'd only be right to use it for England in those 2 finals, especially the last one against India, which they had in the bag for, it turned into a 20 over final, didn't it? For 39.5 overs, they were on top, but couldn't get the job done. And I guess that's the question mark that hangs over them in this tournament. When push comes to shove, can they get the job done? If you'd said to me 6 months ago, Steve, how do you fancy England's chances? I would have been slightly cautious on the grounds that I don't think the bowling attack can defend a score, not unless it's a really out of sight score. But the last couple of months especially has changed all of that, particularly their recent series with South Africa, particularly Saturday's ODI. There will have been plenty of times in the past where England would have lost that game. In fact, they should have lost that game. But they suddenly found a death bowler in Mark Wood who managed to restrict South Africa, a decent South Africa side who were going along quite nicely at the time. And that just makes me wonder, have they got something that they can offer at the death of an innings in a knockout game, that if a side needs 30 off 30, that they're not out of it? If they have got that, then they're the worthy tournament favourites. If they haven't, then they're going to be relying on winning the toss and chasing in those knockout games. That's obviously a 50-50 call. You're getting 11-4 on them to win the tournament. I can't see them not escaping their group. I'm not necessarily saying it's an easy group, but I think over the course of the 3 matches, I would back them to win at least 2 of them. But then the pressure gets on, doesn't it? We saw in the World T20 final that when they're under pressure, they can just falter. That would be my only doubt on them, though, Steve. I think 1-11, they're a great side. They'll match up to any side in this competition. They're fantastic to watch now. This is a completely different England side to the one that went to the World Cup 2 years ago. As I say, my only doubt is in a knockout game. Can the bowlers deliver?
So, I mean, if England are going to win this tournament, the key players that are going to have to perform, who's that going to be?
Well, the obvious one is Ben Stokes, isn't it? Not necessarily to the levels that he performed in the Indian Premier League, but he just brings so much balance to this England side. He allows England to play 2 spinners for starters, and the longer that they're in the competition, the more impact that will have. It allows England to play an extra batsman down at number 7 in Moeen Ali, who's in great form, 100 against South Africa just last week. It allows England to play with a bit of freedom, knowing that they've got that batting depth. And also, he can bowl at the death as well, can't he? Now, obviously, there's a slight injury cloud about him going into the tournament, which isn't ideal, although I suspect that England, the more is being made of that from outside the England camp than inside it. Certainly, that's the opinion that I get. So he'll be a big player, Steve. And obviously, any of the bowlers will be big players. Mark Wood, Liam Plunkett, will come on to him a bit later on. And also with the bat, Alex Hales, for me, is the best opening batsman England have had in a long time. If he can get them off to good starts, usually when he gets to sort of 30 and 40, he goes really big. So he could be a big player for England as well.
England have a lot of strength in depth. I mean, from my point of view, I look at someone like Johnny Bairstow on the sidelines, and I don't know how he can't get in the team, Kev, but that is how strong England have. They have so many options that sitting on the sidelines now, don't they?
Absolutely. It's not just Johnny Bairstow, Sam Billings, David Willey, probably not going to get in the starting lineup. Stephen Finn can't even get in the squad for this tournament. That's how strong England are going into it. So certainly don't lack for strength in depth, that's for certain. And obviously being the home side, if they need to call someone up for an injury or something, then it won't be a problem. So they've got all of that in their favour. You're right about Johnny Bairstow. He's unfortunate that he's around in this generation rather than 3 or 4 years ago. He'd have walked into any England side then. But that can only be a good thing.
And the one weakness for England, you still think is slight question marks over the bowling potentially?
Only in the last 10 overs or so, Steve, when they're under pressure, yeah, they bowl an awful lot of length balls that get clobbered. Even the other day in that South Africa game, Chris Morris was waiting, and he knew he'd get the length ball eventually, and he duly did, and he tucked into it. The one thing was he didn't get it in the final over. Mark Wood bowled a fantastic over. I think there's a trend going round that if you sit on the England bowling attack enough, they'll deliver eventually for you. But they're getting better in that discipline. Ben Stokes performed admirably with the ball at the death in the IPL. Chris Wokes has shown a decent foothold at the death. As I said, Mark Wood as well. So all of a sudden, options are coming there. If it is a weakness, but it can also be a strength of theirs as well. The one good thing that England's bowling attack does take wickets in the middle overs. Adil Rashid, big part of that, and that's something that will be big. If England can go into those death overs with the opposition 6 and 7 down, then there won't be anywhere near as much pressure on their bowling as there could be.
Okay. And prediction for England? How far are they going to go?
Well, I think they'll get out of the group, Steve. So semi-final or final. They're not my idea of the winners, but I expect a good run from them.
Okay, let's move on to Australia. They're the second team we're going to talk about in Group A. And, well, obviously great pedigree in so many 50-over tournaments. This is a nation that's just used to winning, isn't it? And, I look at their squad and I see them as they should go really well in English-type conditions. They're obviously going to be a serious threat, Kev. Let's talk a little bit about them. First of all, let's start the batting. And I mean, there's plenty. It's loaded, this order, isn't it, with so many top quality players.
Absolutely, so much power in this batting lineup. It's untrue. Probably only rival England in terms of power, out and out power. David Warner, Aaron Finch, Glenn Maxwell, Steve Smith, although not known for his power, certainly goes big when he gets in. Plenty of other power batsmen, Travis Head, and a couple of other sort of tasty all-rounders a little bit further down the innings that can give it a bit of
Chris Lynn, if he gets a game.
Chris Lynn, of course. Plenty of others down the order that can give it a bit of Reggie Biffington as well. It's it's a stacked batting lineup, isn't it? People of our generation, sort of 25 to 40-year-olds, will only know Australia winning 50-over competitions. Those slightly older than that will remember the West Indies being the dominant force. But in our generation, it's been Australia, hasn't it? They're the current world champions. I don't think that's too much of a surprise. They won the World Cup win last on English soil. Again, I don't think that's a surprise either. For me, they're the team to beat in this competition. I think whoever does beat them will win it. I think they're a really good side. The rankings won't tell you they're the best side in the world. But man for man, at their best, I think they are.
They're talking about the bowling attack, and there's some really good pace bowlers in the ranks here for Australia. In terms of spin, are they going to rely a lot on Adam Zampa?
They will do, but they've got Maxwell, Head, who can bowl some overs as well. I would imagine one of them would kind of play as a part-time bowler. I wouldn't have thought they'd ever want to play two spinners anyway. So, they'll rely on Zampa, but he's perfectly reliable. Aaron Finch as well can turn his arm over, can't he? So they're not short of spin options. And I think really and truly, you only need to worry about the spin options the longer you go in this competition. I think for the group stages, your seamers are generally by and large going to go okay, especially with the weather suddenly taking a slight dip over the weekend.
It's a really sort of formidable pace bowling attack. I mean, this looks to me like they're going to be taking wickets right from the off, Kev, with the pace they've got.
Yeah, well, Mitchell Starc has an incredible record in this format, Steve. Very rarely does he not take 2 wickets over the course of his 10 overs. And, he's not alone in that. There are some, like you say, there's some real out-and-out pace around Pat Cummins, John Hastings, who spent the last 2 summers playing county cricket, so we'll know all about these wickets. They certainly don't lack for firepower with the bat or with the ball. That's one thing that you can say about this, and indeed any other Australia side. Whether they're a bit too expensive, well, time will tell. But certainly when you look down their squad list, Pattinson, Starc, Hazelwood, they can pick any sort of 3 out of their 5 seamers really, and they'll give anyone a game.
If Australia have a weakness, what is it?
Probably in their middle to lower order. I think once you get sort of beyond Maxwell, their batting can run out quite quickly. Matthew Wade will probably dispute that, and quite rightly so. But if the likes of John Hastings don't come around, they could miss James Faulkner. He's obviously not been picked for Australia since his drink driving incident when he was at Lancashire last year. So he could be a big miss. Obviously, they've kind of picked Moses Enriquez in that role. But as we saw at the IPL, you wouldn't back him to keep anything tight. So possibly that. They could possibly lack a genuine all-round seam player. Obviously, Maxwell would be classed as an all-rounder, as a spinner. But yeah, if there's a concern, if they need sort of 60 off the last sort of 8 overs or something to win a game, and they're 6 down, have they got someone who can get them runs without Faulkner? That would be my doubt.
Now, you say you think they're the team to beat, Kev. So I presume you think they're going to go quite a long way. They're obviously a massive contender to win it outright.
Absolutely, yeah. Whoever beats them, I think will be the champions.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to New Zealand then. And I mean, someone like me, I look at this team and they seem more of a bowling team, really, apart from a couple of really quality batsmen. It's like Trent Boult, Southey, McClenaghan. That's a pretty good bowling lineup. But is it fair to say there's a few question marks about where the runs might come from if their big boys fail?
Yeah, if their big boys fail, but their big boys are big boys for the simple reason that they rarely do fail, aren't they? Kane Williamson, he's part of that four-man kind of question, isn't he? Who's the best batsman in the world? I have to say he's the one I enjoy watching the most. Whether that makes him the best or not, I'm not sure. But you've got Martin Guptill, who's a mighty fine opening batsman in this format of the game. Tom Latham, last time we saw him in ODI cricket, he couldn't pick his nose, but he's in good form after the Tri-Series in Ireland just recently. Ross Taylor's been one of the best players in the world for a long, long time. But like you say, if they fail, what's left? Well, Jimmy Neesham can play some decent innings, as can Luke Ronchi. It's not like they're without batsmen. Obviously, we saw Corey Anderson play some good innings for Delhi as well. It's not that they're without the batsmen. It's just you have question marks over whether any of them can get the 70s and the 80s that will be needed to win them the match. At some point, they're going to need it, I would imagine. So
more hitters, aren't they? The more sort of big hitters in that middle order for New Zealand. Get you a few sixes, but then to get out.
Yeah, probably, and that's the thing that they need to go on. I mean, obviously in New Zealand it's slightly different, isn't it? Because, you can one-handed slap it for six on most of their grounds. That's not going to be the case here. They're going to have to work it around if they've got athletes to pick up ones and twos, that kind of thing. Yeah, their middle order is definitely going to be tested at some stage in the tournament. But that said, if Kane Williamson or Martin Guptill are in good form, they're quite capable of riding on the back of them too.
Yeah, let's talk about the bowling lineup, Kev. And it's similar to Australia. They've got some really good pace options here, and you would expect they'd go quite well in English conditions.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. The only thing you would say about their pace bowlers is they're probably more dangerous as swing bowlers, aren't they? And this white ball hasn't been doing an awful lot of swinging in English conditions. So obviously we had the 50-over competition in county cricket over the last month, and nothing really swung. Nothing swung in the 3 ODIs that have been played either. So that would be my kind of concern for them. There's no out-and-out paces there like a Mitchell Starc or like a Mark Wood, like a Kagiso Rabada, that kind of bowler. They're all
samey.
They're all decent bowlers, but they all rely on swing, don't they? If there is no swing, you can kind of hit through the line of them. So they could get targeted a bit. That would kind of bring the slower bowlers into play. Mitchell Santner's, Jeetan Patel's. I mean, he should know absolutely every inch of all of these grounds. He's played in county cricket longer than I've been alive, and I've been alive for a fair while. So those two will be important unless they can find some swing. I mean, if we've had a lot of humidity in the UK over the last few days, haven't we? If that humidity can make its way to sort of Birmingham and Cardiff, they might get some swing there. I wouldn't fancy it at the Oval. And we shall see, but yeah, that would be my concern for them.
Do you think they can progress from the group? And if they could, if they got out of the group, could they go on and win it?
Well, you can never really write New Zealand off, can you? They love being the underdogs. They almost pay someone to write them off, wouldn't they? It's what they do. It's what they've been brought up on. The kind of small country, just the annoying ones to Australia sort of thing. Yes, they can get through, but in order to get through, they're going to have to beat either England or Australia. So it's not going to be an easy task. But if they do beat one of those, you would fancy they'll beat Bangladesh. It's not a certainty, but you would fancy it. And 2 wins will get you through.
Yeah, you could say they're a bit unlucky to be with England and Australia, who are the 2 favourites to win the competition. You can actually back New Zealand at 11-1 if you fancy them to win this Champions Trophy. Now, the final team in Group A is Bangladesh. They're a rank outsider, 50-1 to win the tournament. I'm sure a lot of people will presume they're just here to simply make up the numbers, Kev, but is there a bit more to Bangladesh than initially meets the eye?
Well, a lot of people thought that 2 years ago, didn't they, when they turned up to the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, conditions were never going to suit them. Also, they said, they'll be going home pretty quickly. Also, they said they upset England in the group stage, made it through to the quarterfinals, didn't they? It was that kind of thing that earned their spot here. Let's not forget they're here instead of the West Indies, so they're here by rights. They're a dangerous side, Steve, Bangladesh. Whether they'll get the conditions to be dangerous, I'm not sure. The thing about them, for my money, is they're batting heavy. I think they'll put up plenty of runs in this competition. I see absolutely no reason why they won't push for 300 or challenge it. We saw in the warm-up game against Pakistan, didn't we, that they scored 340, albeit on a ground which had a very, very small boundary. The question mark will be whether their bowlers can deliver the goods. Obviously, they've got, a couple of improving seamers. Mr. Fazur, he'll be around. He'll be a danger, particularly in these conditions. But, this is still a Bangladesh attack that probably relies more on its spinners, Shakib Al Hassan, and the Hadi Hassan, Rubal Hossain, those kind of players. And in these conditions, are they going to get the spin that they need? I'm not sure. I like Taskin Ahmed as a quick bowler. Shafi Al Islam, he'll have a part to play, as of course will the captain Mashrafi Mortaza. That would be my concern, though. Can they bowl or restrict two of England, Australia, and New Zealand? That's a big ask. I think if they chase and they get off to good starts, they'll put the wind up a couple of sides. But it's probably beyond them, you have to say. Probably one competition too soon for a young side.
It's really interesting that you say you wouldn't be surprised if they post up totals of over 300, because I can imagine people saying, "Oh, if you concede 300 to Bangladesh, you've got a big problem." I don't think a lot of listeners who are perhaps not familiar with Bangladesh that much would expect them to be sort of batting top heavy, really. So let's talk a bit about some of these batsmen who might surprise people. Tamim Iqbal, I suppose he's the most obvious one. He's done it before, and I think people are more aware of him. What about some other ones who going to surprise?
Well, Shakib Al Hassan's the best all-rounder in the world, isn't he? Whether that's true or not, he's rated the best all-rounder in the world. He's a really good batsman. He's played at Worcestershire and a couple of other counties, so he'll know conditions pretty well. For my money, I've always been a fan, ever since he come into Bangladesh side, of Mushfiqur Rahim, the wicket-keeper. I think he's absolutely quality. Mahmudullah in that World Cup scored back-to-back centuries, didn't he, 2 years ago? If he can produce anything like that then he's going to propel Bangladesh up to some decent totals. And then the one that you've really got to watch out for is perhaps the star of the future as far as the batting's concerned, albeit at 25 years old, Shabir Rahman. He's a really good player. He's guilty of getting in and getting out, as a lot of Bangladesh players have been in the past. But, we're only talking a maximum of 3 innings in the groups here. If he can come good in 2 of them, then those scores will come. It will be no surprise to me if they score big. They're used to playing on pretty flat wickets, aren't they, out in the subcontinent? So that's why they're batting heavy. But that comes at a detriment to their bowling.
How big a shock would it be if they won this tournament? They are 50-1, but it's not like they're 500-1. So, would it be a massive shock?
Well, they're not 500-1 because there's only an 8-runner race, isn't it? Yeah, it would be a shock, Steve. You're talking, we've just seen Huddersfield make it to the Premier League in football, haven't you? It would be along those kind of lines, I would think, albeit they've only got to win 4 or 5 games. They don't beat the top nations as often as they should do, although they are starting to beat them a lot more than they were. But to do it 4 times out of 5, that would be a big ask. I don't see them doing that. But I certainly see them being competitive. There won't be no taking them on handicaps to be absolutely thrashed. Perhaps by Australia, but certainly not the other 2.
Okay, let's move on to Group B, and this looks a really balanced, sort of even group potentially. We'll start with India. They're actually the 4th favourites to win this tournament, which might surprise a lot of people. And I'm guessing, and I was in my cricket dressing room at the weekend talking about this tournament, and I think everyone's sort of opinion of India is they can't do it outside of Asia, and perhaps that is a reason why they're 4th favourites, Kev, here. But on paper, they've got a really quality lineup, haven't they?
Well, I'll just direct your cricket dressing room back 4 years, Steve. The last time this tournament was held in this country, India won it. They won it by right. Okay, England choked in the final, but let's not take nothing away from India. They played good cricket throughout. And I think those days where they can't do it outside of India are long gone, to be honest. Maybe that's the case in Test cricket still, but I don't think it's the case in one-day cricket anymore. They've got 3 or 4 of the best batsmen in world cricket in Shikhar Dhawan, Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli. They've got players who still haven't lost it. Yuvraj Singh, MS Dhoni. Those top 5 can be a match for any side in the world in any conditions. Doesn't really matter. But the reason why they used to have this stigma about them, why they couldn't do it outside of India, was their bowling attack. They obviously relied heavily on their spinners, but those days are long gone. This is a seam attack now that if you take Australia out and maybe South Africa out of this competition, this is a seam attack that can stand up to any. We've just seen what Bhuvneshwar Kumar can offer at the Indian Premier League. Then you've got Jasprit Bumrah, who will be a star of the competition, of that I've no doubt. Mohammad Shami might not even start. That's how good this pace attack is. Umesh Yadav, another really good quick bowler. Hardik Pandya can offer some all-round skills as well. I have to say, I'm not necessarily his biggest fan, but he's there. This squad is so strong that the likes of sort of Ishant Sharma, for one, Jaydev Nadkat, who had a fantastic IPL, they can't even get in it. They're from the bowling side of things. You look with the bat, Rishabh Pant couldn't get in it. Robin Uthappa, Gautam Gambhir, none of them can get anywhere near it. So, they look a damn good side to me, India. I don't buy into this. They can't do it outside of India. I think that's nonsense. I think they'll go very, very, very well in this competition.
Is that what people are underestimating a bit? Is that this pace bowling attack is now definitely up there as one of the best in the world? Because everyone's going to be talking about Jadeja and Ashwin, aren't they? And saying, oh, they're not going to be able to get as many wickets in England because it's not going to turn for them. But actually, the pace bowlers are going to more than make up for it.
Yeah, there's that. But they don't need it to turn, do they? Ashwin can turn it on glass. Jadeja's, most of his wickets actually are on through the inside edge, aren't they? Rather than beating the outside edge, getting LBWs, things like that. So I don't think a lack of turn will necessarily be a problem. That said, the longer this tournament goes on, the quick nature of it, the fact that there is only 3 venues in use for this competition, it will turn as we go along. We've already had a week of warm-up matches. Okay, they've been using the extremities of the square in the warm-up matches, but people will still have been running all over the square during those games. So it will turn, particularly in the knockout stages. And that's why I think India will come into their own. They're an aggressive side. They've got a really aggressive, forceful captain in Virat Kohli. Runs are guaranteed with this side. Their batting lineup's just too good not to. When you look at it on paper, they could possibly be having Pandya or Jadeja coming in at number 8. That's a strong batting lineup. And obviously, with Jadeja playing, they'll be able to play 4 out-and-out bowlers too. So I think they've got every single base covered, India. The thing that used to let them down for me outside of Asian conditions was their fielding, but that's no longer the case. They're a crack-hot fielding side now. And for me, they're potential winners of this tournament.
If they do have any sort of weakness, what would you say it could potentially be?
Batting in English conditions, but again, that's only going back a few years. I just think this batting lineup's so strong now that someone's going to get you, whether it's the top 2, the next 2, or the 2 below that. Someone's going to get hold of them, aren't they? I mean, you just look at the players that may not start in this. In their first game, only one of Dinesh Karthik or Kedar Jadav's going to play, you would think. So that's the strength of their batting. So, there isn't an awful lot of weakness in this side.
Yeah, and you think they're going to be the team to beat, and we'll come to that later on the outright bets. Now, Pakistan are in this group as well, which is really tasty. It's not often we get to see India and Pakistan play each other these days. Now, I've got to say, of all the teams in this competition, perhaps along with Sri Lanka a little bit, I know least about Pakistan than anyone. And I suppose that's been the case for the last 20 years, Kev. They're such an enigma of a side. You never know what's head or tail with them, really. Let's just start with their batting. Who's to look out for here? And what type of batting team are they? Are they more sort of on the deck or big hitters?
Well, they're brilliantly inconsistent, aren't they? That's the one thing you would say about Bangladesh. About Pakistan. They're probably stroke players, to answer your question about their batting. It's a bit of a shame that Umar Akmal's been dumped from this squad. Some sort of disciplinary thing. That's a bit of a shame. He would have been a big hitter. They've got, the odd hitter or 2 in their side. But they've got batsmen who can really, really score big. You know, Mohamed Hafiz, Shoaib Malik, Azhar Ali, the former captain. Shahzad's a pretty aggressive opening batsman too. And Babar Azam, for me, the best ODI batsman in the world right now. So, you know, they've got a decent batting lineup. The fact that Umar Akmal is not in the squad just goes to show how strong it could be. So they shouldn't lack for runs, but this is Pakistan, and you can never, ever tell whether they're going to turn up or not with the bat, and that's their problem.
Just exactly how deep are they going to go, do you think, though, with the batting lineup? Because is there enough all-round ability that can keep them going if they suffered a collapse?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got the likes of Shoaib Malik in the side who'll get through quite a few overs of spin, haven't you? And on the flip side of that, you've got Imad Wasim, who, when Pakistan were over here last summer, produced a couple of really eye-catching innings, sort of down at 7 and 8. Sarfaraz Ahmed, the captain, wicket-keeper, he's a decent player as well. He'll sort of bat 6 or 7. Yeah, they'll go fairly deep. They'll probably have a couple of rabbits at the bottom, Pakistan, as they would do, where, you know, their bowlers are genuine bowlers, aren't they, rather than all-rounders. But, you know, what they'll lose in sort of 20, 25, 30 runs down the bottom of the innings, they'll certainly make up for with firepower with the ball, that is for sure.
Yeah, 9, 10 and Jack are never particularly run getters, are they, for Pakistan? And never have been, and never will be. Going with the out-and-out bowlers, obviously led by Mohamed Amir. But who else could be a lethal bowler for them in this tournament?
Junaid Khan's a fantastic bowler, Steve. He's shown that time and time again in his spells with Lancashire, usually only in the T20 Blast, but he has played some red ball cricket here as well. If you think back to that last World Cup, Wahab Riaz bowled one of the best ODI spells you've ever seen in that, when he played against Shane Watson. I think it was in Melbourne. I might be wrong. Shane Watson didn't know what day of the week it was. He was fantastic, and he's capable of some really, really brutal spells, you know, sort of 95 mile an hour, short, diggy, horrible, nasty spells of bowling. And when the opposition are kind of getting away from Pakistan, Ahmed will turn to him and give him a couple of men out in the deep and say, go bouncers, and, you know, he'll definitely be a danger. But it's not all seam attack, Steve. They've got a young leg spinner, Shadab Khan, who is very highly thought of. He had a really good Pakistan Super League earlier in the year, and this is kind of his breakthrough tournament, really, at world level. He did play against the West Indies in an ODI series just recently. He looks a really good prospect, 18-year-old. I'd expect him to go well. And of course, there's Hassan Ali, who went pretty well against England last year. So they don't lack for bowlers, this lot. But then again, you find me a Pakistan squad over the last 30 years that has them. Really good bowling depth.
Now, the way I see Pakistan is there's going to be one group game when they are absolutely shit hot and play a brilliant match and just surprise everyone. Then yet another game, they'll probably stink the place out. And the third match, which could be anything. They are alarmingly inconsistent, aren't they? Do you think they can have a run at this tournament?
If they bat well, they're genuine contenders in these conditions. Genuine contenders. They kind of Mickey Arthur's brought a real discipline to the side, which is a good thing for them. You know, they don't kind of sack matches off now when things are going against them. They've got a little bit of fight and a little bit of heart about them. They do still have problems with the bat, particularly when they get under pressure. They do lose wickets in batches, and that's never a good thing. But if they come to the party with the bat in this tournament, the rest of them really need to watch out, because this ain't a bowling attack to mess with.
20-1 to win this tournament. I suppose if you wanted a little bit of a dark horse, you could do worse than backing Pakistan.
Absolutely, it wouldn't put anyone off. Obviously, they're going to have to beat India or South Africa at some stage to get through their group, but we're talking one-off games here. It's not like you've got to beat them over 5 matches like you do in normal ODI series. Anyone can beat anyone in a one-off game in this competition, Steve. That's why I love it, and that's why it's so brutal. So, absolutely, there's value there. Obviously, if they get through, they're likely to run into Australia or England, so it would get tougher for them. But, you know, 20-1 on a side the quality that Pakistan have got. They've only got to win 4 matches, and you're collecting.
Yeah, let's move on to South Africa, and we've seen quite a lot of them recently over here with the England series. They look a good side, I've got to say. Pretty good all-round ability. Usually in these big tournaments, well, something goes wrong for them, doesn't it? I mean, you didn't want to use that C word earlier. I'm going to use that choke word. And, you know, the sort of side that will get out of a group and they'll somehow lose, you know, sort of a semi-final or whatever, when it looks like that they were going to win one. But let's just talk about the team as a whole, starting with the batting, a lot of big names who stand out. Top of the order, there's some big hitters. I've got to say, Quinton de Kock looked in good nick, I thought, recently. If he starts to fire along with, you know, the genuine, consistent quality guys like Amler and de Villiers, there's plenty for the opposition to fear, isn't there?
Absolutely. If de Villiers alone fires, the rest of them have got to watch out. The best one-day batsman in terms of dynamism in the world, without a doubt. For South Africa, I think this tournament's come 6 to 9 months too late, really. They obviously had a lot of damage done to them over the last 3 to 6 months with county cricket taking a lot of Kolpak players. One really, really big loss to them in Kyle Abbott. He just gives that bowling attack a little extra depth. And I do worry about their bowling slightly if Morne Morkel goes lame, which, you know, could happen at any stage. Abbott was a real wicket-taking force in this format of the game, but unfortunately, whilst he's going to be in England this summer, he's going to be playing for Hampshire, not South Africa. David Wiese was another one. He gave them a good all-round option alongside Chris Morris in the middle order, and they've kind of struggled for a number 6 for an awful long time of South Africa, and you know, that option's gone away from them. So from that point of view, I think this tournament's come at the wrong time, actually, and I think England kind of exposed that a little bit over the weekend. If their top 4 fire, top 5 with Duminy, if they all fire, then they can go really, really well. But if 2 of them don't, and they rely on 2 of them, there isn't an awful lot of depth. Yeah, there's hitters down there like Morris, Parnell, Fekler if he plays as well, but you know, I wouldn't want to be relying on those guys to score you that 60 or 70 or 80 that we mentioned with New Zealand, and that would be a real concern.
Yeah, you're right. It's a lot of hitters, isn't they? You know, if you need a quick fire 6 or whatever, then, you know, up steps Chris Morris and he'll get your job done. But can they go on and make the bigger scores? Yeah, there's question marks there. The bowling itself is going to be led by Kagiso Rabada, who looks real top quality at the moment, it must be said. As for the rest of it, I mean, Chris Morris, Imran Tahir, and then it's sort of, you're looking at this guy, Filakwayo, who's quite hard to pronounce, Wayne Parnell or Morkel if he stays fit. Do we know the exact makeup of this bowling lineup yet?
We don't. I would imagine they'll want to play Morne Morkel, in which case I would imagine they'll kind of go Rabada, Morris, Morne Morkel, Tahir, and then one of the all-rounders, Parnell, Pretorius, Fekler, one of those to complement it with Duminy offering a kind of 6th bowling option. For me, though, Steve, you know, the bowling in this side is not irrelevant. So I think it's always going to be important. For me, their success or their failure is going to be down to their top 2. If they have good tournaments, Hashim Amla and Quinton de Kock, then this lot can go well. If they don't, I just fear for them. Interesting team.
I guess, how far do you see them going?
Well, in many ways, their group could well come down to their game against Pakistan, couldn't it? You know, and if it does, then if they can beat Pakistan, then they'll qualify. But, you know, if they qualify and all things are equal, will they beat England or Australia in the semi-final? For me, they'd be significant outsiders in that game. I couldn't put it any other way, really. There's a lot of pressure on them in their opening game, isn't there, on Saturday against Sri Lanka. They have to win that. Pakistan will be like a home game for Pakistan at Edgbaston. And, of course, the same with India at the Oval. So they're up against it for me, South Africa. They could make the semi-finals, but I don't think they're going any further.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I just don't see them as winners of this. Final team we're going to talk about is Sri Lanka. Now, 4 or 5 years ago, you know, this is the sort of team that you could really look at 1 to 11 and a genuine contender in most tournaments. Had some real quality players, but they've undergone a major period of transition, haven't they, Kev? In all forms of the game, really. And I'm looking at batsman odds and bowler odds, and there's only 2 or 3 guys I actually properly recognise. Got to say, my knowledge of these sort of new Sri Lankans is pretty low. Let's start with the batting. Angelo Matthews, obviously the big name here, but who else is going to catch the eye in this tournament potentially?
Actually, Steve, they've got 2 of my favourite batsmen in world cricket at the minute, particularly in this format of the game. Well, maybe not necessarily as far as Gunaratne is concerned, but certainly Niroshan Dickwella. I really like him in this format of the game. I mean, he is just typical Sri Lankan. See ball, hit ball, not moving too much in the way of feet. But he doesn't half score well. I'm pretty sure you watched an ODI against, or it might have been a T20 against South Africa earlier on in the year in South Africa, and he was taking a damn good bowling attack to the absolute cleaners. I think it was at Centurion. Scored 70 odd in that game, and he kind of announced himself really. And then he went to Australia and he did exactly the same thing. I don't think the pacey conditions are going to be a problem with him. He's actually someone to watch in this tournament. While he's at the crease, he'll be exciting. Obviously, with those kind of players, you never know how long they're going to be at the crease for. Could be there for 5 minutes, could be there for 50 overs. But while he's there, he'll be playing shots galore, and he's got a mighty fine eye, it has to be said. The other one I like in this batting lineup, I'm a real big fan of. He's not actually that young, but he's sort of new to the international scene. Asela Gunaratne, obviously in South Africa, he made his maiden ODI century, and then they went to Australia and he basically won 2 T20s against Australia with the bat himself. He was incredible. He was with the Mumbai Indians during the Indian Premier League. Sadly, he didn't get any game time, but that doesn't necessarily make him a bad player. But when you put those 2 around the likes of Angelo Matthews, Dinesh Chandimal, Kusal Mendis, who had a really good tour over here last time Sri Lanka were here, last year was it? Year before, whenever it was. They've got a half-decent batting lineup now. Yeah, okay, they're devoid of the real stars, Tilakarratne, Dilshan, Kumar Sangakkara. What would they give for him? 5 centuries on the trot at the minute. Mahela Jayawardene, they're without those guys. But they've still got a competent batting lineup. And lots on Angelo Matthews. He's still the standout player in it. And if he bats well, the rest of them can get themselves up to sort of 250, 300. But as with Bangladesh, and when we discussed them, I kind of worry for their bowling attack, Steve, I must admit. Lasith Malinga, he's not the force of old. And really around him, it's just medium pace, and that's a big problem. They've got a couple of spinners who should go well in the tournament. Sekushe, Prasanna, Lakshan Sandakan. They could be tricky to face, but really, you know what you're going to get from the likes of Tisara Pereira, Angelo Matthews, Nuwan Kulasekara, those kind of people. So they're going to have to score a lot of runs for me.
It does look a weak bowling attack, I must say. I was going to say this, take Malinga out, and you're right, he's not the force he once was. They're not going to be able to defend much, are they, with this sort of bowling attack? And, they're going to have to get in massive scores if they're batting first.
Indeed, they are, but then we've only got to look back, and I don't want to take too much out of warm-up matches, but we have only got to look back a couple of days to their warm-up match against Australia, and they very, very nearly knocked them off. So you write this lot off at your peril. In each individual match they'll be competitive, of that I'm sure. Can they put 4 competitive performances together to win the tournament? I'm less sure.
They are 33 to 1, so quite a big outsider. Who's the more likely to win the Champions Trophy, Bangladesh or Sri Lanka, Kev?
Sri Lanka, because they're in the easier group.
Okay, well, now we're going to talk about betting for the actual tournament, and you've got one outright pick. You're going with India for reasons, obviously, that you've already talked about in this podcast. But let's just talk about it from a betting point of view itself. They are the 4th favourites, 5.5 you can get. But it's that sort of extra value that you're really keen on here. Yeah,
I like the extra value. I'd have taken them even if they were second favourites. I just think they're a really good side. When you bet on these things, you have some people out there who bet on who they think will win, don't they? Which is fair enough. And then you have people like myself who like to bring the price into play and kind of match the 2 up wherever possible. Now, if you if you ask me the question, who do I think will win the Champions Trophy, then I won't give you India as the answer. I will give you Australia as the answer. But there's two reasons to oppose them. One, they're in a difficult group. And two, obviously, they're a point and a half shorter than India are. But I don't think India are that far behind Australia. I really don't. I can't see India not getting out of their group. Even if they have to come through in second place, I'm pretty confident they'll beat Sri Lanka, and they've got a wonderful record against Pakistan. So even if they fail to beat South Africa, and I don't think they will, I think they'll beat South Africa as well. They're more likely to come out of their group than any of those ahead of them in the market. England, Australia, and South Africa. I mean, obviously England and Australia have got to beat New Zealand. South Africa have got to beat either India or Pakistan. So there's that in play, and also they know how to win tournaments, Steve. Australia, when they were winning those tournaments that we discussed earlier, they weren't necessarily the best team all the time, but in the big games they were. They just knew how to win tournaments. Well, England don't have that. South Africa certainly don't have that. It's only really Australia who do have that, and even then, a lot of that generation, the Michael Hussies, the Michael Clarks, the Matthew Haydens, and even with the ball, your kind of Glenn McGraths, those kind of people, they're gone now. There's a lot of new players that aren't all altogether used to winning tournaments. I'm talking Travis Head, Pat Cummins, those kind of people, Whereas this India side, you look right away down it. Dhawan won this, player of the tournament when this was won last time. Yuvraj Singh, MS Dhoni made that winning knock in the World Cup final 6 years ago. With the ball as well, Jadeja, Ashwin, they've been there, they've done it. And I think when push comes to shove, that'll be a big thing. And I also think the longer that this tournament goes on, the more the conditions will replicate Asian conditions. And that's when India really should turn up and come right into their own. So 9-2, I really think they're a great bet in the tournament.
And if you were to have a few quid on an outsider, who would it be?
I love Pakistan. I've always had a soft spot for Pakistan cricket. They just play it the way I love to watch it be played. I'd love to see them go well. Do you know what? I wouldn't put anyone off a couple of shekels on Sri Lanka at 33s, to be fair. Yeah, they're going to have to go well with the ball. But, if Malinga takes a couple of threefers, all of a sudden they're out of groups and happy days.
Yeah, I think Group B, you look at it, and I think all four teams will certainly fancy their chances of progressing if they turn up and play their A games, I guess. So let's talk about the top batsman market, and it would make sense that you're back an Indian in this, Kev. And for those who listen to the IPL podcasts, will know that you cashed in on Shikhar Dhawan in that. I think it was at 33-1 place. Sadly, David Warner was just too good overall there. But you're going to stay faithful with your man here, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. He was the top scorer here 4 years ago when the competition was here. With the batsman and the bowler, Steve, in any Champions Trophy, only one top batsman or top bowler hasn't made the final of the competition. So unlike some tournaments where you can get away with not making the final, that's not the case here, I don't think. And I guess that's true, isn't it? I mean, short form, maximum of 5 innings with the bat or the ball. That fourth and fifth innings can really count against someone who's only playing 3 innings, for example. So at the very least, you want someone who's going to get into the semi-finals. And if they have a couple of really good games in the group stage, they might survive even if they're not in the final. But in an ideal world, you'll have someone who's in the final. And I think Shikhar Dhawan will be. He's a mighty fine cricketer. I love watching him play. I love watching most left-handers play, really. But I really, particularly, there's something about Dhawan that I like. It's just the flow of his bat. I'll just give you some stats, Steve, because I do like backing my picks up with stats. In ODI cricket in England, he averages 74 with the bat. That's not shabby when, like you said, the general perception is that this lot can't play in England. He averages 43 overall in ODI cricket worldwide. So, it's not like he can't bat anywhere else. He's already scored a 40 in the warm-up game. In 9 innings in England, he scored 2 centuries and a 97 not out. So he's another one who, when he gets in, he goes big. Now, often in that IPL that you just mentioned, he got a start, didn't he? But because Sunrisers was slightly behind the 8 ball, he had to start slogging when he didn't want to. Ain't going to be the case here, is it? He can bat the 50 overs if he likes. It'll be the job of Sharma, Kohli, Yuvraj, etc. to up the run rate. he'll be the glue, and I can see a century or two from him. And if we get that, he's a massive runner in a field really that you can narrow down when you think about it.
Tasty price, 40-1. I mean, for someone who's going to be batting so high in the innings, for a team that's probably going to go deep, it looks quite ridiculous in a way, doesn't it?
It's a massive price, and also he's starting. There's some teams that are a little bit unsure of their batting lineup. That's not the case with India. We know what their top order is going to be: Sharma, Dhawan, Kohli, Yuvraj, Dhoni. So he's definitely going to open.
Which didn't surprise me. It did not surprise me that he was going to be your main batting pick here. But we move on to your second selection, which is Aaron Finch. And I've got to say, this one did surprise me a bit, because when I think of Australia, I've got to be honest, I look at David Warner, I look at Steve Smith, and I'm like, well, who's going to score more runs than them for Australia? But you think Finch can go well?
I do. I mean, obviously, you're right about those two, but Finch has got the start on Smith in terms of he'll open and Smith will bat at 3. So Finch will have more time at the creases in theory. I don't like backing captains in these tournaments, Steve. There's already enough pressure on them as there is. But also, Finch is another one who plays well in England. He averages 41.8 in ODIs in England. He also hit that amazing 156 in the T20 International at the Ageas Bowl, didn't he? In the warm-up games for this tournament, he's already got 137, 36 not out. He's only had 6 ODI innings in England, but he's got 250s. He had a spell with Surrey last year where he filled his boots. I think he's played for your lot as well, hasn't he, at certain points in time.
He had a few good innings for us as well, I think.
So there's something about England that he absolutely loves. The fact that he played for Surrey last season will mean that he's very at home at the Oval, and sometimes that wicket can take a little bit of getting used to. Australia, obviously, they play Bangladesh there, so you would think if there's a game that they're going to cash in on, it will be that one. So I just think he's a really big price. Yeah, you're absolutely right with what you say about Warner, and I certainly wouldn't put anyone off. But you look at the prices and go back to what we're saying in the outright market. You've got Warner at kind of general 8-1. And you've got Finch at 25-1, 3 times the price. Is he 3 times less likely to top score? No, not for me. So certainly in these conditions, I think the 25-1's a great bet.
Yeah, worth mentioning. These are each way bets, 4 places at a quarter of the odds. Your final top bat selection for the tournament. We mentioned him briefly earlier, Pakistan's Babar Azam, and I'm guessing quite a few listeners who don't really follow cricket in depth won't know an awful lot about this guy, Kev. Whereabouts is he going to be batting for Pakistan?
Just to finish off on the Aaron Finch one quickly, Steve. He doesn't play any group games in Cardiff, which if weather attacks anywhere, it's going to be there. So that's very much positive. Babar Azam, he'll bat at 4 for Pakistan. He might even bat at 3. It depends where they bat Mohammad Hafiz. He's a real class act. I mean, a really class act. Probably more so in this format of the game than any other, but he's getting there in Test match cricket as well. He averages 55.08 in ODI cricket, Steve. But he's really come to the party in the last year when he's really needed to. Since sort of Misbah disappeared from the scene, he's really stepped up and been counted. In his last 11 innings, dating back to September of last year, he scored 5 centuries and an 84. Now, okay, 2 of those centuries came in the UAE, which is fair enough. But 2 of them came in Australia, Steve, against Australia. You have to be a damn good cricketer to score a century against their bowling attack on those conditions. One of them was in Perth as well. No more needs to be said on that. And he also scored 1 in the West Indies. So we can play quick bowling. So we don't need to worry about any of that. He's clearly a guy who knows how to bat in 50-over cricket. You don't put up these weight of runs this significant a level this early in a career if you don't know how to pace a one-day innings. It'll take a while to get going, and that is in itself a concern. But when he does get going, very much like his former captain, he will certainly catch up in a big way. If Pakistan do anything, he's going to score runs. I would not be in the slightest bit surprised if he goes big in this tournament. He's the kind of player who could score a couple of centuries, and even if Pakistan bite the dust early doors, he scored enough runs to cling on to, if not the top spot, a place.
And at 33-1, you certainly wouldn't mind a place there. Let's move on to the tournament top bowler. Now, before we talk about your selections, what type of bowler is likely to take most wickets in this tournament, really? Do you want to be bowling at the start of the innings, the end of it, or the middle part? I mean, it's an interesting little theory here.
You always want to be bowling at the start and the end. That's not to say that there won't be wickets taken in the middle part. Of course there will. But the cheaper wickets fall at the start and at the end, particularly at the end. You're likely to be bowling against the tail, and if you're not, you're bowling against the side who's going to be slogging. So if you've got the ability to hit the stumps, chances are you're going to, you're going to get your reward. That said, the middle overs you can take wickets, but I think by and large, generally in any tournament, you only have to look back to the Indian Premier League, don't you? Top two bowlers were Kumar and Adkat, both bowled at the start of the innings, both came back at the death. It's not rocket science, really.
Favourite in this market is Mitchell Starc. We're going to talk about him in a minute, actually. But then you've got Adil Rashid and Imran Tahir, the second and third favourites in the market. You said it's an advantage to be bowling at the death, so why not go for one of India's death bowlers, Jasprit Bumrah, 16-1. Tickles your fancy, doesn't he?
Absolutely, all day long. Mentioned him in nearly every podcast that Mumbai Indians played in the Indian Premier League. You've just said it there. If he's not the best death bowler in the world, he's certainly up there to be counted. Top 3, top 4. He can hit the stumps. So if he's bowling at lower order batsmen later on in the innings, there's an awfully good chance he's going to get some wickets clean bowled. The other reason why I like Jasprit Bumrah over one or two others in this market is if teams struggle to get Ashwin and Jadeja away and they're behind the run rate, then they're going to have to slog against the seamers, and that means they're going to have to take risks against Bumrah. Now, we saw in the Indian Premier League when teams did that against the Mumbai Indians, he came along and wiped them all out, and there's potential for that to happen again. We think India are going to get to the final, so we should have 5 bowling innings to have a go at. Even just 2 decent innings and then chip in around it should be enough to have him well in contention.
Yeah, 16-1. Again, 4 places, a quarter of the odds. Final selection in this top tournament bowler. You're going with England's Liam Plunkett, Kev. Interesting pick.
Yeah, big price, but he does take wickets in ODI cricket. Just coming in off the back of a pretty decent series, really, against South Africa. Obviously, he didn't play in the final game, and we can understand him having a rest. Obviously, he's been part of the county action earlier on in the season as well. He also played in the Ireland games. You can never really know with this England side who's going to take the wickets in the middle order, Steve. I mean, obviously, Adil Rashid's almost certain to bowl, but more and more, England have been bringing him back a little bit later. So, it might just be that he's not the kind of certainty that he used to be, Adil Rashid. And the one thing I like in ODI cricket at the minute, as I mentioned right at the start of this, is out-and-out pace. I think it's a real big thing. Plunkett's that kind of different bowler to most in that he's got out-and-out pace, but his length is slightly back of a length that you don't see in ODI cricket these days. Generally, the quicker bowlers pitch it up there. Your Rabadas, your Cummins, your Starks, and they target the stumps, and that's not really the case with Plunkett. He can bang it in short, and he can kind of surprise teams, and that's what I like about him. The other thing I like, as I said, he takes wickets. He's played recently, sort of since the start of March. He's played 7 ODIs, 3 against the West Indies, 2 against Ireland, 2 against South Africa, and in that time, in those 7 matches, he has 17 wickets, Steve. So 4, 3, and 3 against the West Indies in conditions that do not suit seamers no more, and 3 at the Ageas Bowl on Saturday, and that's also a place that doesn't suit bowlers. So on flat wickets, he can take wickets, and I think that's going to be a big thing in this competition, Steve. We are going to get flat wickets. Of that, there is absolutely no doubt. You only have to look at how the tournament hosts play their cricket. They wallop everything. They ain't going to be producing no green seamers. They ain't going to be talking to no groundsmen and saying, whoa, India here, let's have a dust bowl. These are going to be true roads throughout the whole of this competition, apart from when the natural wear and tear comes into play. And I think that Plunkett's pace, and his wicket-taking ability in those middle overs will really come to the fore. He's a really good ODI bowler these days, and hopefully he shows that in this tournament.
Yeah, and a big price as well, 50 to 1. Again, 4 places at a quarter of the odds. We did mention Mitchell Starc as the hot favourite in this market. You're not going to back him in that, but you are going to take him top Australia bowler. He's as big as 3.75 in this particular market. So I suppose in a way it makes a lot more sense to be taking him here when he's only got to beat 2 or 3 other guys.
Absolutely. Obviously, you know, something could happen to Australia in the semi-final, and then you're losing out on a game that he could potentially bowl in. Also, his price outright is terrible at 10s. I wouldn't be backing any bowler at 10 to 1 in a field of this quality. But you're right. I mean, really, who's he got to beat? You know, he's the leader of the attack. He bowls at the start. He bowls at the end. As I said earlier, very, very rarely does he not take 2 wickets in a game. And I don't see anyone beating that, really.
Yeah, pretty obvious selection. 3.75. Mitchell Starc, top Australia bowler. And now in the top Sri Lankan batsman market, we mentioned him earlier. A player you really like is Niroshan Dickwella, and he's 4 to 1 to be the top Sri Lankan run scorer. You think he's got enough to take Angelo Matthews out?
Well, he's very much the danger, Steve. Angelo Matthews. He's a quality cricketer. Been one of my favourite cricketers for a long, long time. Kind of cricketer that I love coining it in on performances on, and I'm sure I will do as the tournament goes on. But Dickwella, he just reminds me of my childhood days, really, where I sat in front of the television, eyes glued to Sanat Jayasuriya. You know, he just doesn't move his feet. He'll spray the ball to all parts. The faster it comes down to him, the quicker it goes off of his bat. Can hit it miles. I nearly took him outright, to be fair, but I just don't think Sri Lanka are going to go far enough for him to be a competitive force. If Angelo Matthews has a quiet innings and Sri Lanka only they don't make it out of the group stage, so they've only got 3 innings overall, then I think, you know, Dickwella only needs to put a couple of cameos together to give himself a real chance. He's not the certainty that he may have been sort of 12 months ago. I think this Sri Lanka batting lineup has matured into something that's a lot better now. But he's the quickest of the scorers, and he opens the batting, so he'll have the fielding restrictions to swing from the hip out. Is there a real genuine out-and-out new ball bowler against him? Well, not for me. I mean, you know, the likes of Trent Boult, Tim Southey, Mitchell Starc, et al. Are all in the other group. It's only really Rabada, and he's already taken him to the cleaners in South Africa this year. So the big price at 4 to 1. I wouldn't rule him out by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, you certainly knew when you'd been Sanath, didn't you, back in the day? So let's hope this kid can put on some good performances for us. You know, I think it's going to be really interesting covering this tournament with you, Kev. Just one thing to mention: you probably will have some more team individual bets, but at the time of recording, you've not quite fully decided. So keep an eye on Kev's website for any extra bets there. We're going to be covering every single match in a separate podcast, and there's only 1 match per day. Am I right in saying that, Kev?
Yes, absolutely, Steve. 1 match a day. Another reason why I love this tournament. Don't have to miss a ball of it. Should be really, really good. Really looking forward to this one, Steve.
Yeah, so we can provide comprehensive analysis. Great, hopefully some great winners, especially from you, Kev. I'm just going to be sitting here and doing most of the presenting, but I might have the odd pick from now and then. And, you know me, I like to lay into a few players as well, don't I, when they're not performing too well. So it should lead to some tasty debates from me and you. So, yeah, we look forward to the first match podcast. But from this particular tournament outright preview, I'll say goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye for me too, Steve. Really enjoyed it. Roll on Thursday.